Hello everyone. I'm Dr. Nikita Valluri, working as an assistant professor in Siddhartha Institute of Pharmacy. So I'm here to teach you a pathophysiology for Form D second years. So we have completed Unit 1. Now we are going with Unit 2. So Unit 2 is inflammation and healing. And so before going to that, we have to know what is inflammation. Inflammation is nothing but it's defined as local response of living tissues in response to any injurious agent. So whatever the response that we give in response to any injurious agent, that we call it as inflammation. So it's a body defense reaction in order to eliminate or limit the spread of injurious agent, followed by removal of the necrosed cells and tissues. So it's a mechanism in which we have to eliminate in which we'll be eliminating or limiting the spread of this injurious agent, and it is followed by removal of these dead tissues or necrosed cells and tissues. So that we call it as inflammation. And then what are the causes of inflammation? So what are the causes of inflammation? The agents causing inflammation may be like these of the things. See, as we heard that it is a response given to an injurious agent. So whatever the reasons, whatever the causes that cause cell injury are considered here also the same causes of inflammation. Okay. So the agents causing inflammation are like infectious agents like bacteria, viruses, fungi, toxins, parasites, and then immunological agents like cell-mediated and antigen antibody-mediated reactions, and physical agents like heat, cold, radiation, and mechanical trauma, and chemical agents, it may be like organic and inorganic poisons, and inert materials like foreign substances. So all these are the agents which cause cell injury. So inflammation is a response to the cell injury. So all this comes under the causes of or etiology of etiology of inflammation. And now, what are the different types of inflammation? So there are mainly inflammation. There are two different types of inflammation depending on the defense capacity of the host and duration of response. It is divided into two types, that is acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. So what do you mean by acute inflammation? Acute is nothing but it will be like a rapid response which is given immediately and is of short duration. Okay, so it is of short duration lasting less than 2 weeks and representing a body reaction which resolves quickly and is usually followed by healing. So as it is a fast response and it is for shorter duration, it will be followed by healing. And then what is chronic inflammation? Chronic inflammation is of longer duration and occurs either the causative agent of acute inflammation persists for a long time, or the stimulus is that it induces inflammation from the beginning. That means acute inflammation, if it is prolonging or if it is continuing, it may lead to chronic inflammation, or sometimes something whatever the reason acute whatever the reason or the stimulus which is there, it directly may cause chronic inflammation initially from the initial stages. So that we call it as chronic inflammation. So now today in this class, we'll be studying regarding the pathogenesis of acute inflammation and what are the events that will be taking place in case of acute inflammation. Okay. So as we see in this, it's a response produced by the host in response to any agent. It's a continuous process, and the response will be within like it will be of short duration and is of immediate response will be seen. So whatever the events that are present in case of acute inflammation, they are of two types. First is vascular events, the second is cellular events. So not only this vascular and cellular events, along with this, there is involvement of certain chemicals. They are called as inflammatory mediators. Okay. So what do you mean by vascular events? Vascular is nothing but there is involvement of blood vessels. That is, there is involvement of blood vessels. So what are the events that takes place in the blood vessels? Alteration in the microvasculature. What are the things that comes under microvasculature? Arterioles, capillaries, and venules. These are the smallest branches of the blood vessels. So these changes, the changes occur in this microvasculature in response to any tissue injury. So these alterations can be seen by two different ways. One is hemodynamic changes and the other is changes in the vascular permeability. So in coming to the hemodynamic changes, so there is a sequence of reactions that takes place in the hemodynamic changes. It is of 5 steps. First is immediately when there is any attack or caused by any injurious agent, immediately first there will be transient vasoconstriction can be seen. That is transient. Immediate response is transient vasoconstriction of arterioles. That means there will be constriction of the blood vessels. So the lumen of the blood vessel will be narrowed. So it's a transient process. That means it lasts less than few seconds. So, and then next it is followed by persistent progressive vasodilation. Immediately after this vasoconstriction, it will be having progressive vasodilation. Slowly the blood vessel will be vasodilated. That means the lumen of the blood vessel will be widened. So it involves mainly arterioles, and sometimes venules and capillaries may also be get involved. So this change is obviously like it takes like half an hour of cell, after half an hour of cell injury. So because of this vasodilation, so the lumen of the blood vessel will be increased. So the blood volume will be increased in this inflamed blood vessel. Whatever the blood vessel that is involved in inflammation, there will be, in that blood vessel there will be increase in the blood volume. So because of this increase in the volume in that particular arteriole, it will be having redness. So the appearance will be like that region will be like redness can be seen. And if you sense it with your hand, you can feel warmth. That is heat sensation can be seen at the site of acute inflammation. So after progressive vasodilation, it is immediately because of this progressive vasodilation, there is elevation in the local hydrostatic pressure. So because of this vasodilation, the local hydrostatic pressure will be increased. Because of this increase in the hydrostatic pressure, there will be translation of fluid into the extracellular space. That means if you consider this as the blood vessel, this as the blood vessel, and if you consider this as the extracellular space, so from this lumen or from this blood vessel, because of increase in the hydrostatic pressure, whatever the volume or whatever the fluid present in the blood vessel will move out of this blood vessel. Because of that, there will be swelling due to accumulation of fluid in the extracellular space. So because of this reason, there will be swelling at the local site of inflammation. And next, as there is a progressive vasodilation and movement of the fluid out of the blood vessel, there will be slowing or stasis of the circulation. That means the flow of blood will be slowed down because of this vasodilation. So what will happen because of this? Whatever the plasma gets, that gets moved fastly, and whatever the blood cells like red blood cells, white blood cells, and whatever the cells are there, their concentration will be increased. So because of this, there will be raised blood viscosity. That means thick blood will become thick because of more number of blood cells in that region. And then stasis or slowing is followed by leukocyte margination. So in the blood vessel, as I said that there is increased number of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. All these things are more compared to the plasma, like their concentration is more. Among these, whatever the leukocytes are there, they will move to the peripheries. That means they will move to the periphery of the blood vessels. That we call it as leukocyte margination. Once they move to the peripheries, they will bind to this vascular endothelium. So, and thereby they'll damage this vascular endothelium, making a hole or passage over that, and all the things whatever present in the blood vessel will be moved out of the vasculature into the extracellular space. So that way, this process is known as emigration. Okay. So all these hemodynamic changes can be seen and triple response. So that is first, there will be red line appearance. So there will be presence of red line. This is due to vasodilation, and then there will be flare. Flare is like nothing but it's like a red color, bright reddish discoloration surrounding this red line. This is due to vasodilation of corresponding or the adjacent arterioles or venules. Red line is due to the arteriole which is mainly involved, and flare is due to the adjacent arterioles. Okay, vasodilation of adjacent arterioles. And what do you mean by wheal? Wheal is nothing but pain. So sorry, wheal is nothing but swelling or edema. So because of progressive vasodilation, whatever hydrostatic pressure will be raised. When hydrostatic pressure is raised, whatever the contents are there, they'll get moved into the extracellular space, causing swelling. So wheal is nothing but swelling. So red line, flare, and swelling. If you see this is the arteriole, main arteriole, which is involved in this reaction. So because of this vasodilation, here we can see this red line. So these are the adjacent arterioles and venules. So because of this, you can see this pinkish discoloration, that is flare. And because of this movement of fluid contents out from the blood vessel into the extravascular space, there will be accumulation of fluid. Because of that, there will be swelling or edema, and then this we consider it as a nerve. So because of this inflammation, as they get vasodilated, they will compress this nerve, which is responsible for stimulating or identifying the pain. So when this nerve gets compressed, then it will be having a pain. So these are the symptoms: rubor, that is redness; tumor, that means swelling; and calor, that means heat. Why there will be heat? Because of vasodilation, as there is concentration of blood increases, blood cells increases, there we can see this heat or warm sensation and pain. Along with these four signs, there is another sign called loss of functionalisia, that we call it as loss of function. It was later added by Virchow. So these are the hemodynamic changes. It includes 5 steps. First is transient vasoconstriction, second is progressive vasodilation, and third is increased hydrostatic pressure. Because of that, they can see swelling, and then followed by slowing or stasis of this microvasculature circulation. So because of that, there will be increased in the concentration of the blood cells, causing increase in the viscosity of the blood, and it is followed by leukocyte margination, movement of the white blood cells to the margins of the blood vessel. So this we call it as immigration. Okay, so this is about hemodynamic changes. So now coming to, there is a hypothesis called Starling's hypothesis. Sorry. And next, the other is hemodynamic changes, and the other is altered vascular permeability. So this we consider it as a pathogenesis of acute inflammation. So what do you mean by altered vascular permeability? What do you mean by permeability? Permeability is nothing but it's the capacity of the blood cells or any cells to, or any particles to move from one part to the other. That we call it as permeability. What do you mean by vascular permeability? Permeability capacity of the blood vessel to move in and out of the contents in the blood vessel, that we call it as vascular permeability. So what are the alterations that takes place in the vascular permeability that are also responsible for acute inflammation? So if you consider in the initial stage, what will happen? As we have seen hemodynamic changes, because of this vasodilation, the escape of fluid will be there, so that there will be increase in the hydrostatic pressure. So whatever the fluid that comes out, we call it as transudate. So it doesn't involve any inflammatory cells, but that we call it as transudate. And what do you mean by exudate? If there is involvement of inflammatory cells, or if the inflammatory cells moved out from the blood vessel, then we call it as that fluid which comes out, we call it as exudate. Okay, so transudate is nothing but non-inflammatory edema. Exudate is nothing but inflammatory edema. So there is a hypothesis called Starling's hypothesis. It explains what are the forces that helps in the movement of fluid into inward and outward of the blood vessel. So for the outward movement of fluid from the microcirculation, for the outward movement of fluid, we require two pressures, that is intravascular hydrostatic pressure and colloid osmotic pressure of the interstitial space. So intravascular means within the blood vessel, what the hydrostatic pressure should be there, and outside there should be colloidal osmotic pressure should be there. At that time, what will happen? The fluid will move outward. That means from the hydrostatic pressure to the movements move to colloidal, that is to interstitial spaces. And the forces that cause inward movement of interstitial fluid into circulation, that means the forces which helps in the movement of particles or the movement of fluid from the interstitial space into blood vessel. They are two pressures, that is intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure and the hydrostatic pressure of the interstitial space. Okay, for the outward movement, and the other is inward movement. For the outward movement in the blood vessel, intravascular hydrostatic pressure, here intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure. And here the colloidal osmotic, in the outward movement, colloidal osmotic pressure of the interstitial fluid. Here the hydrostatic pressure of the interstitial fluid should be there. These forces will help in the movement of outward and inward movement of the fluid. So if there is an extra or any fluid which is left in the interstitial compartment, that will be drained by lymphatics. So because as this process takes place continuously, there will not be any edema. But in case of inflamed tissues, what will happen? Whatever the endothelial lining is there, which is the lining of the blood vessel, it becomes more leaky. Why it will becomes leaky? When these leukocytes or get moved to the margins, they'll react with this endothelial layer and cause a hole. So in this way, they create a hole. Because of this, what will happen? Whatever the intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure is there, intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure that we see in case of inward movement, that will be decreased, and the interstitial fluids, hydrostatic pressure of the interstitial fluid will be increased. So as there is increase in the hydrostatic pressure in the interstitial fluid, water or the fluid which is present in the interstitial space will move into the lowest intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure. See, once again I'll repeat. So for the inward movement, what are the pressures required? There should be an equilibrium between intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure and the interstitial space hydrostatic pressure. But in case of inflammation, what will happen? Whatever the intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure is there, that will be decreased. And the outside, that is interstitial space hydrostatic pressure will be increased. So when there is increase in the hydrostatic pressure outside the blood vessel, and inside blood vessel there is decrease in the colloidal osmotic pressure, as we know that from high pressure to low pressure things will move. So because of this reason, whatever the fluid which is present in the interstitial fluid will move into the vasculature. Is that clear? Resulting in excessive outflow fluid into the interstitial compartment, which is exudative inflammatory edema. Once again, I'll repeat. Intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure decreases and osmotic pressure of the interstitial fluid increases, resulting in excessive outward flow of fluid into the interstitial compartment. Inside, colloidal osmotic pressure decreased, and the outside there is increase in the osmotic pressure. So increase in colloidal osmotic pressure causes outward movement of the fluid. So because of this, So because of this, what will happen? There will be outward movement of fluid from the blood vessel into the interstitial compartment. Once again, I'll repeat. So intravascular colloidal osmotic pressure is decreased, and the extravascular colloidal osmotic pressure is in the interstitial fluid osmotic pressure is increased. So because of this, what will happen? There will be excessive outward flow of fluid into the interstitial compartment. From here, they will move into the interstitial compartment. So that we call it as exudative inflammatory edema. So this is the arteriolar end, this is the venular end. This is a normal fluid exchange. Here in normal condition, this is the HP is hydrostatic pressure, and this is osmotic pressure, hydrostatic pressure. So this is the interstitial space. So here the tissue tension 4 mm and osmotic pressure is 8 mm. So what this remains over here and this remains here. And if there is an excessive fluid, because of this lymphatic outflow or lymphatics, excess fluid will be drainage and there will not be any edema. Okay. So when coming to this acute inflammation, here the hydrostatic pressure is normal, but osmotic pressure within the osmotic pressure within the blood vessel is decreased and the hydrostatic pressure is normal, and here the osmotic pressure is increased. So here the osmotic pressure is decreased in the blood vessel, here in the interstitial space there is increase in the osmotic pressure. So what will happen? So from here hydrostatic pressure which is high, and here the hydrostatic pressure is low. So whatever the fluid which is present in the blood vessel causes the movement of fluid into the interstitial space. So whatever the fluid is there, that will get accumulated in the interstitial space, causing the edema. Okay. And the mechanisms that are involved in the increased vascular permeability are endothelial cell contraction, endothelial cell retraction, direct endothelial cell injury, leukocyte mediated endothelial cell injury, and neovascularization. I'll show it in this diagram. So because of these are the endothelial cells lining these blood vessel. So if there is any contraction between these endothelial cells, there will be formation of a gap. So from these also the contents get moved out of the blood vessel. And the other is retraction. So this is see, if this is a size, this is called as contraction. Retraction is movement of the contracted cell apart. Because of this also there will be formation of space or gap. From this the contents will move out, and then direct injury of the endothelial cells. So directly there will be damage of these endothelial cells. So because of that they will become small in size and causes leakage. And then the other is endothelial injury by PMNS, that is polymorphoneutrophils. So whatever the leukocytes are there, they get moved to these peripheries. So once they move to the periphery, they will form a they'll bind to these endothelial cells and causes the damage. And the other is neovascularization. What do you mean by neovascularization? Neo means new. Vascularization means formation of new blood vessels. So in case of new blood vessels, the endothelial lining will be very thin. So they will be more prone to get leakiness. So these are the mechanisms how these are the mechanisms of altered vascular permeability. So this is all about vascular events. Then what do you mean by cellular events? Cellular events, it includes two processes, that is exudation of leukocytes and the other is phagocytosis. So in the exudation of leukocytes, it involves polymorphoneutrophils is the first line, and the other like monocytes and macrophages are also involved. So what are the changes that takes place in the elements of like cellular events that takes place in the normal axial blood flow? So initially, because of these stasis, there will be more concentration of blood cells and then followed by margination of leukocytes to the peripheries. And then because of this movement, they will move to the, due to the slowing, it will becomes widens and the plasma zone becomes narrower due to laggage. So this phenomenon is known as margination. So movement of the leukocytes and blood cells to the margins, peripheral margins is known as margination. See, and then among these leukocytes, if there is presence of polymorphoneutrophils, then we call it as pavementing. And rolling and adhesion, in this, what are the changes that takes place? So whatever the blood cells are there, first they will roll on this endothelial lining. That phase is called as rolling phase. And once they find a good place, they'll get sticked to that with the help of certain agents or certain molecules like selectins, integrins, and immunoglobulin June superfamily addition molecules. So these three molecules are involved for the sticking of these leukocytes to the endothelial lining. That phase is known as adhesion phase. And then once they get sticked to that endothelial lining, they should undergo immigration. So after sticking, what will they do? They will release, they will act, these neutrophils, what will they do? They will release certain kind of pseudopods. So these pseudopods, what will they do? These will release certain enzymes like collagenases, so or that is proteases. Like, so all these enzymes, what will they do? They will cause the damage of this lining of this endothelial layer, so thereby they form a opening, and from then the blood cells will move out of the blood vessel. That process is known as emigration. So in this emigration, if it involves red blood cells, then we call it as diapedesis. And the other is chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is nothing but it involves certain chemicals are involved in this transmigration. So it is explained by like a test solution and micropore filter. So these are the polymorphoneutrophils. This is a micropore filter. So this is a test solution, and this is the chemotactic agent. So in the presence of chemotactic agent, there will be there will be fast transmigration of the leukocytes can be taken place. So what are the potent chemotactic substances? For neutrophils, they are like leukotriene B4 and C5A and C3A. Cytokines like interleukins, TNF alpha, and soluble bacterial products. These will act as chemotactic components. And then phagocytosis, it undergoes then the step is followed by phagocytosis. It is defined as a process of engulfment of solid material, that is also called as cell eating. So it involves two kinds of cells. They are like polymorphoneutrophils and the other like microphages, and the other like macrophages are also involved. So when these neutrophils and macrophages on reaching the tissue space, what will they do? They will release certain proteolytic enzymes which cause damage of this endothelial lining by degrading the collagen and the extracellular matrix, so that there will be damage to this layer. So if you see this, it involves three steps. Phagocytosis involves three steps. One is recognition and attachment. So first, whatever the foreign particle is there or any other particle is there, it has to be recognized, and then it should stick to this cell, and then it will be engulfed by forming a pseudopod and then killing by and then it is killed by binding with this lysosome. It forms a phagolysosome. Once it is in the phagolysosome, it will release certain granules, thereby it will kill and degrade this bacteria. So these are the steps involved. So for recognition, molecules involved are mannose receptor and scavenger receptor. And for attachment, there is a molecules which helps in attachment. They are called as opsonins. These will form a bond between the microorganism and the endothelial cell membrane of the phagocytic cell. Cell membrane of the phagocytic cell. And then engulfment, whatever the opsonized particle is there, it will be engulfed by forming a pseudopod, plasmic pseudopods. It will engulf or envelop this phagocytic vacuole. So once it is entered into the cell, then it will enter into the cell cytoplasm. Once it entered into the cytoplasm, it will fuse with the lysosome and forms phagolysosome. So once it forms a phagolysosome, whatever the whatever the enzymes that will be released by the lysosomes, that will kill and degrade this mycobacterium. So it will do this process by following two mechanisms, that is intracellular mechanism and extracellular mechanism. So this is how they will act. So NADPH oxidase present in the cell membrane of phagosome reduce oxygen to superoxide. So NADPH will reduce this oxygen into superoxide. This superoxide will be converted into hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide acts as a bactericidal agent. This is how it will kill the bacteria once it entered into the lysosome. And there is also other mechanisms like MPO independent and dependent. So in all these mechanisms, it follows certain reaction and will kill the and degrade this mycobacterium. And the extracellular mechanisms, it involves granules. In this, there will be degranulation of macrophages and neutrophils, which will help in the killing of this mycobacterium. And the other is immune mechanism. Even immune mechanism, here it involves antigen antibody lysis and cell mediated cytotoxicity and cytolysis. By these mechanisms, it will kill the bacterium. So these are the steps that are involved in the cellular events that are involved in the acute inflammation. So what are the vascular events, cellular events? In vascular events that we have studied in five, like hemodynamic changes and altered vascular permeability. Hemodynamic changes we have studied in 5 steps: vasoconstriction, vasodilation, increased hydrostatic pressure, slowing and stasis, followed by leukocyte margination. These are the hemodynamic changes. And the other is altered vascular permeability. For altered vascular permeability, that also we have seen. So in this altered, for that we'll be seeing this transdate and exudate. So in this there will be involvement of 5 mechanisms. First is endothelial cell contraction, and the other is retraction, and the other is direct cell injury, endothelial cell injury, and the other is leukocyte mediated cell injury, and the other is neovascularization. So these are the mechanisms of increased vascular permeability. And then cellular changes, here the cellular changes, there is of 2 types: exudation of leukocytes and the other is phagocytosis. For exudation of leukocytes, there will be changes in the formed elements. It involves rolling and adhesion, rolling phase and adhesion phase. Once there is adhesion phase, then immigration, that is movement of white blood cells or inflammatory cells outside the blood vessel into the extravascular space, that we call it as immigration. If there is involvement of red blood cells, we call it as diapedesis. And there is also involvement of certain chemotactic enzymes like leukotriene B4, C5a cytokines. All this helps in the transmigration of leukocytes. And then phagocytosis, it involves PMNS, that is polymorpho-neutrophils, macrophages, and macrophages. So they also follow 3 steps. One is recognition and attachment. Attachment is done with the help of opsonins. So this opsonin will help in the forming of bond between this foreign particle and the cell and the phagocytic cell. So once it forms a bond, it will form a pseudopod. So after this, it will be enveloped or engulfed into the cytoplasm. So once it entered into the cytoplasm, so it will react, it will combine with the lysosome and forms phagolysosome. Here there's some kind of reactions, metabolic reactions will be taken place. So because of, by these mechanisms, it will kill the bacteria and will degrade the molecules in the cell. Outside the cell, it will do this process by degranulation of macrophages. So these are the steps involved in acute inflammation. So I hope the topic is clear for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.